I have just seen The Flash, and here is my full spoiler-free reviews. I've just got back from the cinema after watching The Flash, and I really need to talk about it. Now, I was very excited to see this movie. The second trailer was what convinced me that this would be a really great film. It had everything I needed to be hyped for this film, so going into this movie, I was hoping for a really good film. And it seemed like it was going to be that, with Tom Cruise, Stephen King, and a ton of fans who got to see it early all saying that they loved it. However, after watching it, it feels like they all saw a different movie to me. I have to say, I was very disappointed by The Flash. It started off great, but got progressively worse and messy. Now, I know with time travel it's meant to get a bit confusing and messy, but this wasn't like that. This just felt poorly executed. It's like this film had 3 different directions it was going in the end they had to choose one, but they never fully connected it together, which is the fault of the studio. When watching it, it felt like Warner Brothers had a plan for The Flash, then Warner Brothers Discovery had a plan for The Flash, and then finally James Gunn had a plan for The Flash. And if you've been following the behind the scenes of The Flash or early leaks from the film, then you definitely know which scenes James Gunn or Warner Brothers Discovery have changed. It just felt like a bit of a creative mess. No one was fully in charge, and no one had a full story told. It was bits and pieces from each hierarchy, and it just didn't add up. Ezra Miller as the Flash was good, mainly as our Barry Allen, as the other Barry Allen was just infuriating, and I wanted him to disappear. He was okay for a little bit, but as time went on, I just wanted him out of the picture. And to be honest, that's how I feel with this movie's humour. At the start, I was like, okay, not the best humour, but it's alright. But as time went on, it just got more and more annoying. And by the end, I just realised that this kind of humour isn't for me. I've always said I prefer more mature takes on superhero films as I find them more interesting. But I can enjoy superhero films with a lot of humour in them, like the Guardians of the Galaxy films. But the quality of humour in The Flash is just irritating. In all honesty, I found it quite cringy. I laughed a few times, but most jokes just didn't land with me. The other thing that disappointed me was the score. It had some really good moments, but overall felt quite flat and not very engaging. It had no real standout theme other than Keaton's Batman theme, which really helped his scenes, but other than that, nothing majorly special. One of my biggest complaints is the CGI. I've seen people bashing it and I've seen people defending it, and I think it's clear to see that we all have different opinions on the CGI in the Flash movie. Personally, I thought the CGI was very weak in many places. And I think the cinematography and the way the film was colour graded has a big impact on that CGI. One thing that really annoyed me was that they even CGI'd Barry's face when wearing the suit in some shots for some reason. These weren't even running shots or shots that needed CGI. These were shots when they were close up on Ezra Miller in the suit. There were even scenes where Barry was standing still and just moving his arms, and the suit was clearly CGI. It just annoyed me because it felt like such unnecessary CGI. The suit looked so fake and rubbery that it just took me out of the scene. Why not make a suit that doesn't need CGI to help it move? The CW did it easily and managed to make the suit fit Grant Gustin perfectly, and that's with a far smaller budget. It just feels like because they have a larger budget, they feel like they don't have to take as much time thinking about these things, as they know that they can change it in post anyway. So you get moments where Barry lifts his arm up and the suit moves around in a really fake way. Objects looked flat and people and buildings looked very fake, and there were moments where the film reminded me of the CW Flash show. Certain scenes felt empty even when there were many people in the shots, which leads me onto the desert battle. It felt empty even with hundreds of soldiers around them, simply because none of them were actually there. It was all CGI. No on-set locations, no grounded feel to it, no extras. When I saw fans comparing some of the shots to a video game, I thought it was a bit harsh, as it was just from a trailer and people were pausing it, but actually watching it on the big screen had very little difference. It felt like a video game. Now on to the characters. My favourite character, surprisingly with such little screen time, was Ben Affleck's Batman. His action scenes were incredible, and it seemed like his relationship was building with Barry. I just wish we saw more of him. It does make me want to see more of Batfleck, as I felt his story wasn't finished. However, his suit looked very bad, and I wish they never changed it from what we already had. My least favourite character has to be the other Barry Allen. Like I said earlier, he was so annoying. It would have been so much better without him there, and would have been such an upgrade if we had Grant Gustin's Barry Allen alongside him. They took the easy option of making him the comic relief, even though every character seems to make jokes. I would have been interested to see a Barry Allen who was far more serious than our Barry Allen, and actually countered the already hyperactive, high-intensity Barry Allen. I was also very disappointed with both Supergirl and Zod. Supergirl wasn't used enough in my opinion. She has a lot of potential, but they seem to not fully utilize that character. I think Sasha Calle could be a good Supergirl, but this movie did not show her off well enough. And as for Zod, he felt like a shell of himself. He may have looked like Zod, but he did not feel like Zod. We barely had any time with him, and he just felt like a character that was used for the story rather than being his own character. It relied on him being in Man of Steel. If it wasn't for Man of Steel, Zod would have meant nothing to the audience. This film added nothing to that character. Keaton's Batman relied on nostalgia, but at least served a purpose. He did have some very good scenes and some poor scenes. It was exciting to have him back, but something about it just didn't have the impact it originally had after the second trailer. I think they may have just massively over-promoted him. I saw the same scenes over and over again in them, and so when it came to finally seeing it in the cinema, they just didn't have the same impact. That may be my fault for watching a lot of trailers and TV spots, but it still didn't have the same impact that I think they were going for. And finally, our Barry Allen, the center of the film. He had some great moments. I love the first 5 minutes of the character, although there were some questionable action choices within that scene. But he did have the biggest character arc in the film. Now, the final bad thing I will talk about is the Speed Force cameo scene or scenes. I won't spoil them or go into details about them, but what I will say is that I think they were terribly executed. It felt like forced moments of nostalgia, and it was definitely where the CGI was at its weakest. I would have even been disappointed if a brand new video game I just bought looked like that. And I mean that with the deepest respect to special effects artists, because it's not their fault. Studios are rushing these projects and are not funding them nearly enough. Studios are using far too much green screen with very little references, which means VFX companies are having to do their best in a short time frame with virtually no references other than photos or videos of the characters. I miss the days when superhero films were shot on actual locations. You really feel the lack of reality when shooting on a green screen. It's so easy to tell, and unfortunately that happens a lot in The Flash. If you watch Man of Steel when they are standing in the desert, it actually feels like they are in a desert, where in The Flash, you can clearly tell they are using green screen sets and it's really off-putting. It feels like lazy filmmaking, which really annoys me, as then the movie itself starts feeling like a cash cow instead of an actual film. Now, that's all the negatives out of the way. What did I like about this film? Well, I really liked the moments when we were in the DCEU timeline. Seeing Barry talk about the Justice League and interacting with Alfred and Batman was refreshing to see, because it made this film feel connected to the past, which had been missing from previous DCEU films. It wasn't ignoring past events, it actually embraced them early on. I liked that the Justice League felt like an actual group still. Another thing I liked was how this Barry Allen had evolved from where we last saw him in Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's become more mature and more aware of his powers, even acknowledging his time travel in the Snyder Cut, which allows the events of this film to flow far easier than if they ignored that Barry had time traveled before. To be honest, the first half of this movie was the best. The second half became much weaker and did so very quickly, which I have a suspicion is where the interfering from the studio came in, whether that be pre or post merger. But the first half, specifically the first act, was the best from the whole film. It's probably because because it's my favourite part of DC on show. I love the DCEU even with all its faults, and I just wish we spent more time there. I also really enjoyed the action throughout the film. Some things were slightly questionable or difficult to follow, but for the most part, it was really good. It's just a shame that the CGI was so weak, because if it was stronger, I would have been able to enjoy the action a lot more. The family aspect was the main emotional factor, and it mostly impacted me when I heard Batfleck talking about him losing his parents. We didn't get to see much of his emotional vulnerability in the previous films, so to see that side of the character being touched upon was a nice addition, although it did feel like a lot was cut from his scenes. Unfortunately, that's really all the things I enjoyed from the film. It was one of these DC films that I was really excited for, but was also really disappointed by. I'm never going to lower my standards for these films because it's up to the studio to hit them. But if more DC films are like The Flash, then I will be worried for the DCU. I guess time will tell. I would give The Flash a 5.5, maybe 6 out of 10. It was above average, but nowhere near my favourite DC film. I'm sure over time, my opinion will evolve as I would have had more time to think about it, and maybe seeing it again may change that opinion. But as of just getting out of the theatre, this is how I feel about the Flash movie. If you have seen The Flash, make sure to let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day. Bye!